Hey Jeepers, today we're going to look at the installation of light brackets for the front of a JL or JT. This is a Jeep 2018 through current model year, which is 23. For front lights on accessory lighting for the front of these Jeeps. So as you can probably tell or know, with these Jeeps we have a plastic bumper. Now, I don't mind the look of the plastic bumper. Yes, the Rubicon metal bumper is awesome. I don't necessarily want to spend $600 on one, mainly because this is just my everyday truck, not something that I off-road. On my 2000 Wrangler, I do have a metal bumper and aftermarket and all that good stuff, and I would rather put my money in that way. But the problem being in a small rural town is there are some dark back roads, and the lights on these Jeeps just don't cut it. They're better than the JLs, but still not necessarily bright enough for some of these dark backcountry roads. And so there's a need to add some accessory lighting. And so there's two options out there if you want to add an accessory light to the front of a plastic bumper. First off, you obviously already have fog lights up here, so you could replace, I guess, three options. You could replace those lights and put in an LED, or if you have an LED, lighted Jeep, that helps tremendously as well. But there is a factory option and a factory bracket that Mopar sells. They're about $89, somewhere around there, and they're kind of chintzy. They're real small. They bracket. They kind of bolt to the frame. The way they bolt is kind of junky, and it's kind of hard to mount them, and there's a lot of headache with it. And that's a mediocre option, but they do sell something that is tremendously better, higher quality, better steel, that Quadratec sells, which is this bracket right here. So this is the Quadratec bracket. This bracket is a little bit more. Retail on it's normally $130 right now. You could buy it through Quadratec for right around $115, $114. And I did not expect this to be this beefy. You're thinking it's not going to hold much light. These lights aren't all that heavy, but it's the way in which it holds it, and this joker is solid. You can see just how thick a gauge steel this is and what it looks like. And so what we're going to do today is we're going to mount these brackets on here, and I'm going to show you how it's done. It's a super easy process, and you can actually mount this in one of two ways, and I'll demonstrate that as well. So let's take a look and see what we come up with. Alright, the first thing you're going to want to do in order to install these brackets is remove this front grille, which is a pretty easy process. It has a few push pins, and it has just a few snaps where it snaps in. You're going to need something like a flat tip screwdriver. What I have is a panel popper tool. Gets a little bit in there a little easier, and I'll show you what this process looks like. Okay, so you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pop rivets, or pop rivet that's here. And like I said, you just work them up. They've got a little indentation. You kind of get up underneath it and remove it. And you do that. Again, super easy to kind of get up under here and pop these up, not damage them. Uh-oh. Get that one in a second. There we go. All of our pop pins right there. Alright, now with all these pop pins fully removed, what you want to do is you want to you see that's already loose. You want to just snap and then kind of grab it in this lower corner here and lower corner here, and then the whole grill just comes up and pops off. And so there you're left with just the core support, which is here, which is what this amounts to. And then you've got this support here down on bottom, and that's the support we're looking at mounting this bracket, or these two brackets to, which is really good and solid. Alright, so we're going to have, of course, your main bracket, And then you get a little sandwich bracket, and I'll show you what that looks like. And then you get some hardware. So you get a couple of 3 nuts, 3 carriage bolts, and 3 washers. And then this will go together as far as and you'll have that for both sides. Okay, so this is our first bracket on, and I will show you how to put the second bracket on when we go and get to it. But I wanted to highlight something real quick. So there's a couple of things that it's good to know as far as the way this bracket is before we get further into this install. That you can do this. The cool thing about this bracket is you can kind of see where it's going to sit at. It's going to sit just right here above the bumper. Doesn't touch the bumper, doesn't use the bumper for any kind of support. All of the support is truly back behind here, and I'll get you a shot where you can see kind of how well it sits back there. Now, the cool thing is this bracket is angled. So depending on how you put it in here, you can either put it to where the lights kind of sit closer to the inside, because you can see this bracket is offset, or you can move it over here and put it to where the bracket is further out. So I don't know if you can see that specifically, but I'll try to show that. You see there you have your light closer to the outside, but if you reverse them and put it over here, then your light is actually closer to the inside. So depending on how you wanted to do your lighting, you could choose either option, which is really cool that it's not just a straight on bracket. But these brackets, there is a left and a right bracket, but you can interchange them. And so it just changes the position of your lights. So for me, and the lights I'm going to use, I'm thinking more of the fact of it being more inside versus outside, because I do have the fog lights over here. I think the outside would look fine, but I'm leaning towards the inside light. And so I'm going to get a light and just look at the difference in the way it looks, and we'll go from there. Alright, so here's my light. So due to me adding this grill guard, which is not a JLJT option, it's actually a JK option, I have modified my bumper in order to house it. I wanted something that's going to look a little different. So for those of you who may be interested in what I've done here, that's what I've done. I've modified it and actually bolted it to the frame, because the frames are the same width, but the way the bumpers and all that attach are a little different. So again, I've modified it to do that. So with that in mind, I still want lights up here, but the problem is that I can't do a huge light because of the grill guard. Without the grill guard, which is going to be probably most of your installs, you can put a huge light. Again, this is a massive bracket, so it's going to hold a tremendous size of light. So you could do an 8-inch light up here with no problem. I mean, you could put, these are some heavy duty brackets. And so with the light on there, I can kind of demonstrate a little bit more as far as where the light is. So this is the outside bracket. And this would be with the light inside. So I'm kind of leaning towards the inside, but I don't know. I mean, I think it looks good either way. Again, these are going to be a brighter light, so if I widen them out, it's just going to cover more area. So, I mean, it could be, I don't know, I kind of like it on the outside now that I look at it even more. So, I think I am going to go with it on the outer side. Worst case scenario, I can always swap them around, but I think this is going to be my build. So, let's take a look and see exactly how this bracket goes in and give you some more ideas of what that looks like. Okay, so here we go. So I have one bracket, like I said, installed on the other side, as you can see. And this is the bracket for the other side. So let me show you the easiest way to put this bracket on so that you can connect it. So let me show you how it's actually connected first. So you have the bracket, and then you have this sandwich piece. And then you notice there's this big square hole in the middle of it. There's a purpose for that. And so I'll get to that in a second. So you got a carriage bolt. Notice the square holes on this side, and the carriage bolt has a square piece inside there, right? So that it basically holds itself as you're tightening it. And then you get a washer and a lock nut. So I've already got this one on, and you'll see why here in a second. But this hole, this square, lines up, and if you can see, I don't know if you can see this or not, but there's these little slits on the front of this metal piece, this lower core support piece. Well, those slits line up with the push connections that are on the back of the grill, and so you don't want to cover one of those up, because that's the way the grill snaps back to the lower part of this grill support is really what it is. And so you want to make sure those are lined up. So my bracket over here, if you feel inside this bracket, you can feel this piece here. So you want to line these up. So you can't just put this anywhere you want. You've got to put it, you know, somewhere close that's going to cover, not going to cover one of these slits. All right, so here we go. Here's our bracket. So this is what we want to do. The best way to do this is to kind of bend this down and kind of work this under. Now, you don't want to get your radiator, or actually this is your condenser if you don't have to. And so what you do is you pull this up and over, and then you kind of get that sandwiched. And then with your other carriage bolt, you slide it through there. You get your washer and your lock nut. See if I've got it here. Got a few things in my pocket. Let me get my washers out. Let me find my, there we go, there's a nut. So we get our washer, very carefully put our washer on there, get our lock nut, put it on there and kind of just finger tighten it the best you can. And then get your other carriage bolt and your other lock washer, or lock nut, and your other washer, and go ahead and put it on like this. And get your lock nut in there. And so then what you've got is you've got this loose bracket hanging out there. So now what you're going to need is you're going to need a 7/16 wrench. I would recommend, if you have it, or if you don't, I may get one, a 7/16 ratcheting. It's just going to make it a lot easier when you go to tighten this up. And so you want to kind of get it straight, make sure your hole's where it needs to be. And you get behind here and you start tightening it up. Now, what you're going to want to do is you're not going to want to tighten it all the way down, because these bolts work together. So as you shorten one, it's going to lengthen the other. So you want to kind of do it in stages. So tighten a few of them up. Move on to the next one. That way it's nice and even, because again, this sandwiches on this lower grill support. So it's starting to get a little tight. I'm going to go back down here to my bottom one. Now that's, as it gets tight, I want to make sure that I'm not covering my slit. That lower one's pretty tight. I'm going to go ahead and tighten up these top ones. That one's pretty good. This one's a little loose now. Let me tighten it up. Let me tighten up this bottom one again. You're only going to have probably 2 or 3 threads showing on each one when you're all said and done. So, like I said, you can pick up the Jeep with these brackets. Man, just a solid bracket. So from behind you can kind of see how the brackets lay and how your lights mount on that. And so from the front, here's what you see, what you get. So now I've already got one of my lights mounted and sitting there, so you can kind of see the difference between the two. So let me go ahead and get this other light mounted real quick, and then we'll see how the grill snaps back on. Okay guys, so here we go. We've got both brackets installed, both of them tightened up and in place. We've got both of our lights installed and mounted. Looks pretty good. I chose to put the lights on as I was putting the brackets on, just because I have the grill guard in front of it, and so it made it easier. But you could put it on after. There's plenty of room underneath in order for you to do it. And so don't make the mistake I did at first and put the wiring for these lights on top of the bracket. You need all of the clearance you can get for this grill to snap back in. And so I actually had to pull it off and zip tie it on the bottom and make it to where the wires are held, but they're not in the way of the grill going back on. So let's go ahead and snap the grill back on, and we'll get an idea of what we're looking at. So again, your grill will just go back down, kind of line it up with your push pins, line it up, and it snaps. Sometimes you may have to give it a little push. Make sure it snaps back in good. There we go. There we go. Nice and tight there. And then we just reinstall our push pins. And there we go, guys. Real easy installation. Like I said, it looks good. I mean, it's very simple, but solid. So you could put, this would work great if you did like a light bar. Again, without the grill guard on there, you could put a larger light bar. Of course, you're going to get in the way of your tow hook, so you're going to want to make sure you're aware of that. If you wanted two singular lights like what I've got here, that'll work too. But yeah, a good solid, I would highly recommend these Quadratec brackets. Again, a little pricey. In reality, they were more expensive than my lights. But again, solid, not going to go anywhere. And if I decide to ever do something else, I'm good to go. So anyway, this is the install. I just wanted to share with you guys. Follow my next video where I show how to wire these up, and we'll go from there.